Hello, welcome back to Science Cafe New Hampshire. My name is Rick Irving, and I will once again be your host for tonight's virtual session entitled Aging in New Hampshire. This is actually the second anniversary of our virtual sessions, so we are going strong. And if you have any questions, we'll get to the questions for tonight, but if you have any suggestions, you may submit them also to us via Facebook. So the aging process, as long as we are fortunate enough to have it happen, stay around, it happens to everybody. Over time, our bodies, our needs, our abilities change, and we may need help to adapt. The majority of people would like to age in place, and by that we mean they would like to stay in their homes, their apartments, where they're comfortable and get the services that they need. But oftentimes, circumstances don't allow that to happen. So tonight, through a little bit of the science of gerontology, some discussions about demographics, statistics, the programs and options that are available to people, very importantly, perhaps some costs, and through the panelists' use of their education experience, we will learn more about the aging process and what the options for folks are. Now, before I introduce the panel, as usual, we have a couple of procedural announcements to make. The crux of Science Cafe is to have the public have a discussion with the experts on particular topics. And we accomplish that by having the public, our audience, submit us questions. So you can submit questions to us via Facebook or YouTube and use your comment section, and they will get to us, and then we'll feed them to the panel and generate the discussion that way. When you're submitting your questions, please be succinct. And if you would, please include your location. Since we've gone to this virtual session format, the area that we can have available for the audience is much wider. So it's interesting to us just to see where the questions originate. You may start your questions right now and for the remainder of the program. And as always, we'll get to as many of them as we can. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the panelists to us. First, we have Ellen Burchander. Both of our panelists are joining us from New Hampshire, by the way. Ellen has her bachelor's from Simmons College, her master of social work from Boston College, and a master's from Tufts University. She is currently the graduate program director and clinical assistant professor in the Department of Gerontology at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. And she has also previously been the assistant secretary for programs at the Massachusetts Executive Office for Elder Affairs, helping develop community support and care management programs for elders. Ellen has quite a bit of experience in health and physical, as well as social and psychological aspects of aging. So, Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So, would you take a few minutes and go ahead and tell the audience about yourself, some experience, your expertise, your interests?
Sure. I have been working in the field of aging for 4 decades now, a little more than that. So I started when I was 2. And I have worked in a variety of different settings. I've worked in adult health. I've worked in home and community-based services, care management. I've worked on national research projects. I've worked in the private sector, and I've worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts developing programs and policies and managing and administering programs and policies. So I've had a wide array of experiences at different levels. I've been very, very fortunate because I've been able to work in a field where I'm passionate about the population. I can't imagine working with another population. So I've been very, very fortunate.
Well, thank you. I think we're very fortunate to have you join us tonight. And we're also fortunate to have Allison Rataj. Allison has her BA in psychology from Colby Sawyer University in New Hampshire, her master's in social work from the University of New Hampshire at Durham, the main campus, and she is currently working in second year of her PhD program at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. Allison is the research associate at the Institute for Health Policy and Practice. She has also worked as a program director intern at the Center on Aging and Community Living in New Hampshire, and also has a great deal of experience on this topic. And so we are very, very happy to have you here tonight. Allison?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to the Science Cafe for hosting this great event. So yes, compared to Ellen, I do not have as much experience, but I do think that I perhaps match her passion level, maybe. We'll see as we go through this wonderful panel tonight. So I started off my career in gerontology, as you mentioned, as an intern, but I think that my passion started from a very young age, when I would spend a lot of time with my grandmother and sort of neighbors and friends that were always older than me. And that's kind of where my passion really grew, was to hear the stories and hear the expertise that older people have to offer. And so from there, my passion grew to working with the Center on Aging and Community Living at the University of New Hampshire, where I'm still currently employed. And so absolutely moving into a PhD program in gerontology was a natural kind of shift for me. And so I've recently finished my last year of coursework, and I'm now moving into the part of the process where I will begin hopefully my dissertation work in the fall. So my interest areas are related to loneliness and social isolation.
Great. And congratulations on your progression there. I think you're doing great. So we're going to start tonight with a generic question, but we're looking for your reaction and how you might define. The question is, what is aging? Ellen, would you like to go first?
Sure. I don't think there's a right answer to that question. I think aging is something, well, clearly it's progression and growth from conception to death. That's what aging is physically. It's from the time you're conceived to the time you die. It's how you change in the progression. But sociologically or psychologically, aging is a very different thing. And I think it's different to different people. When I think of what aging is, it can encompass growth and learning. It can encompass expertise and experience. But when we think about it in our culture, we think of aging as something negative. We think of it as decline. We think of it occasionally in older ages as burdensome. And that's not always in most instances, that's not the case. Statistically, only around 4% of people over the age of 65 are actually in nursing homes. And I'm sure when you think about that, it's a lot lower than you thought it might have been. When I ask my students what percentage of people are in nursing homes, they say 20, 25. And the percentage is actually much, much lower. People live longer, healthier, productive lives into much older ages than we actually imagine.
Well, that's fascinating. I also would have guessed it was much higher than 4%. So that's actually a great number.
Yeah.
Allison, what is aging? What does that mean to you? How would you define it?
So I guess to me, aging is something where it is, to kind of go off of what Ellen was saying, right? Our bodies naturally progress through these stages of life. And I think that everyone always wants to hear the quintessential answer of age is just a number, but I think that it's actually more than that. I think that aging you develop more wisdom, you develop more knowledge as you get older. And the opportunities that you have as you get older, unfortunately, as Ellen said, tend to be smaller sometimes. So I guess I don't have a great answer for that question, but I think that aging overall is something that is inevitable. If we're lucky, I'm going to channel Ellen there for a moment. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now our next question's got more interesting. Why do people physically or mentally age at different rates?
Again, there are so many different answers to that question. Part of it is physiology and genetics. If you have longevity in your family, you are more likely to live longer. If you have certain illnesses in your family, you're more likely to develop those illnesses. For example, if both of your parents have diabetes, there's a good chance you will develop diabetes. Or if both of your parents have arthritis, there's a good chance you'll develop arthritis. But it is not a given. What we've learned is that not only does physiology and genetics play a significant role, so does the environment, so does your behavior and your habits. So there are a whole lot of different components to how and why we age the way we do. Things like, I'm sure you've heard that, as you get older, you experience dementia. That's not true of everybody. It's not true. I mean, as you get older, the older you get, the greater chance you have of experiencing some sort of dementia. But it's not a given. If you eat healthier, if you exercise, if you engage in lots of stimulating cognitive activities, you reduce your risk of many diseases, including dementia and Parkinson's disease. There are a variety of different healthy living activities that can keep you productive for much, much longer.
So if you were to say that, are there certain things that you could do or eat or, exercises that you would do for certain problems that may happen later in life, say dementia versus cancer versus diabetes, something like that?
There's a lot of research that indicates that it's not a specific exercise, but if you exercise for a minimum of 2 hours a week, and it could be, some significant walking, the combination that's really expected at this point to be most beneficial is walking regularly, so you're increasing your heart rate, and also some weight training. The combination of those exercises every week, along with stimulation, cognitive interactions, social interactions, and cognitive activities, learning activities, both contribute to keeping you healthy for a lot longer. The more productive you are, the more you contribute to your society, your family, your environment, the healthier you are.
Great. All right. Thank you. Allison, why do you think people physically or mentally age at different rates?
So I guess I just kind of want to respond to some of what Ellen was just talking about. And it's so interesting. This afternoon or this morning, I was in a meeting with the gentleman who helps run senior games. And he was saying, if you don't move, you rust. And, that really resonated with me, that I think that when you're sedentary and you're not moving, kind of as we were just talking about related to exercise, you tend to not have the ability to then, your muscles atrophy, and then you're not quite able to do what you used to do, right? And then that progression continues throughout the life course. So I think that moving is also really beneficial to the aging process. The other thing that I think is really important is related to social connection. So I think that for folks that feel lonely, or for folks that are socially isolated, or perhaps don't have close kin that live nearby, or perhaps they live in a very rural area, or they don't drive, right? A lot of these different factors then contribute to sort of that lack of social connection, which could really lead to a lot of negative outcomes, right? So loneliness has been linked with things like heart disease, obesity, what else? High blood pressure, depression, even death. So I think that ensuring that people have the ability to make those social connections is also really important to physical and mental well-being and health. So
that's very interesting. So the physical well-being, the exercise, can also help your mental acuity as well as your physical afflictions as you age. Very
absolutely.
Great. Okay, next question. Gathering questions from the audience here. What other things can a person do to slow down the aging process or the detrimental effects of aging? Yes, we sort of answered that. Anything to add to that?
This is really simple. and it's not something we think about, and it's beneficial at all ages. But being appropriately hydrated is so key. First of all, it makes you look better. It's good for your skin. It's good for your body, but it's also good for all of your organs.
Yeah.
Unless you have certain disease processes, you should really hydrate throughout your lifespan, because your body is made up of an enormous amount of water. It's good for your cell growth. It's good for pretty much your digestion. And we in the United States don't do this as well as other countries do, which sounds really strange. But we have lots of caffeine, and we have access to caffeine, alcohol, sugary drinks. And although they do have water in them, the other chemicals that they have kind of take away from some of the benefits of just making sure that we hydrate appropriately.
Very interesting. Allison?
So the social worker in me is very much saying self-care, right? So
Okay.
for folks that might not know, self-care is where you really focus on taking the time for yourself, taking the time to give yourself a break from what you're doing, whether it's from work, whether it's from pressure, other types of pressures, school, for example, for myself, school, etc. And the idea of just taking, whether it's 10 minutes to quietly meditate, or 15 minutes to take a quick walk. Self-care is something that I think is very important to us as human beings, and to give ourselves that mental sort of whew. So that's my advice.
So when you see somebody, you talk to somebody about this, what sorts of things do you mention to them in terms of self-care?
Well, I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, what sparks your joy, right? Like if it's sitting down to have a nice glass of wine and read a magazine after a hard day at work, and that's what you think is self-care, and that's what's going to make you feel more relaxed and rejuvenated, then I would say do that. It's a bit about kind of what is going to get you recharged. How do you recharge your batteries? And that's kind of what I would recommend to folks.
All right, fascinating. That's great. Thank you. Now, Ellen, when you mentioned hydrating, besides water, are there any other supplements or things that we should be paying attention to?
I don't know. I think given the world that we live in, there are new fads regularly. And I think what we're learning is that just a healthy diet, lean proteins, lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of water, those are the things that keep our bodies healthy. I think about your car. What you do to your car keeps it running. You make sure that you change the oil. You make sure you put gas in it. You would never put Oreos in your gas tank. It would ruin your car. And yet we tend to eat a lot of sugar and junk food, and we eat a lot of salt, and we're not. And we live in a world where there are lots of pesticides, and our food is processed, and it's just not really good for us. So if we think about the types of things we put in our body, and that's our fuel, that's our gasoline. What are we putting in our body to maximize its performance? And, it's really easy to say. Personally, I find it very hard to do, because I would like that glass of wine once in a while. With chocolate.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I'll let you know, I'm going to actually borrow that analogy from you about what would happen if you put an Oreo in your car. I'm sure that's going to come up in my near future. Okay. The next question is, does New Hampshire offer anything to help the aged population with these anti-aging activities? Good question.
Allison, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. So we actually do have some resources that are available. I think that hopefully, there they are. So you'll be able to, I'm thinking, find some of these resources that are available. But there are programs that New Hampshire offers that I believe Senior centers, some senior centers have different types of activities that you can go to. For example, there's matter of balance classes, which helps older adults sort of think about how to increase their balance, right? Because we know that falls tend to be a very common occurrence for older adults. So helping them maintain the stability is a really important activity. And so, yeah, and then, I don't know, Ellen, what else do we have in New Hampshire?
What New Hampshire is not service rich. I think that's the best way I can put this. Every community does something a little bit differently. So in order to find resources, you need to go to your own community. So the way services are structured in the United States is at the federal level, the Administration on Aging provides funding for a variety of services to each state. Each state has a state unit on aging, and that state takes the funding, like there's Title III and Title V, that usually provides services for older adults. And that includes like home delivered meals, sometimes some in-home services. It provides some caregiver support services, but there really aren't a lot. So the money then trickles down to the states through the state unit on aging, who then sends it out to the area agencies on aging, and they distribute it locally. Many states supplement what the federal government provides by adding additional programs and services. New Hampshire, as we all know, because we live here, does not have a state tax. And so they do not have an abundance of income to put into additional programs and services. And so the cities and towns have to make decisions about their resources and how they spend their money. So it really is important for them to look at their own population statistics to determine how they distribute funding for older adults, children, police, fire, all of the resources that we enjoy every day in our communities. And so it's tricky. It's not that easy. In other states that have significant state taxes, they often have greater resources and can provide additional programs and services.
Okay.
I would also echo and say that for folks that are potentially looking for some of these sort of classes and stuff, the local libraries sometimes host these kinds of events. And the local libraries, New Hampshire only has, I think, 44, 45 senior centers. So there's not one in every town, and there might not be one close to older adults. For example, like if you think of Colebrook, New Hampshire, I think like the closest senior center to them is like Littleton, which is really far away for someone to try and drive. But the local libraries sometimes have different types of programming, or the outdoor rec departments might have some programming that's available for older adults. And also the connections through, say, Facebook. I think there's one of my sort of older friends is part of a group, the hiking mountain mamas or something along those lines, where they meet on Facebook, and they have a wonderful Facebook group. They meet up at a mountain and they all hike it together. So I think that it's sort of using our Yankee ingenuity to come up with ways around how we can get around sort of the lack of services that are available in New Hampshire.
Oh, that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you. As for the audience's benefit, for those programs that we know about, we will have a link available on our Science Cafe website, which you see there. We'll make that available for you to take a look at. All right. So our next question is from Kathy from Nashua. Can the panelists comment on how to find a gerontologist before you're ready for a nursing home or assisted living?
Yes.
Good.
It's not a good comment, and I apologize up front. The United States has a dearth of physicians across the board. People are not going to medical school the way they used to, and that's a problem. And I am a strong advocate for finding geriatricians and gerontological specialists, and they are few and far between. If you go to medical school, you come out with a great deal of debt, and it's many, many, many years to become a physician. And you add your internships and your specializations. And to become a geriatrician, it's an additional year of school and an additional year of residency. Geriatricians are the lowest paid physician in the spectrum. So they come out with more debt, and they have the lowest income. Couple that with the fact that they are working with a population of older adults. It takes someone special to work with older adults. And I don't mean to sound negative, because I have a hard time understanding this myself, but when you go to medical school, you go to medical school because you want to cure people, you want to make people better, you want to save them. And a lot of times when you're working with older adults, you're working with people who have chronic illnesses, or maybe have terminal illnesses, or maybe live with chronic disability or difficulty or pain or loneliness or isolation or anxiety or depression. There are so many issues that as we get older, we have a greater statistical chance of encountering. It doesn't mean you will. It just means that you have a greater chance. And who goes to the doctor? People who go to the doctor tend to have, an illness or a complaint of some sort. So if you're a geriatrician and you're serving only older adults, the people you're seeing have a greater risk of having a chronic illness. And so you can't wave a magic wand or provide a magic pill or do a magic surgery and make them and cure them and make them go off in their merry way so they can, climb mountains and swim rivers. It's not an easy profession to go in. So if you find a geriatrician, it's someone who is committed and really passionate about working with older adults. And that's a wonderful thing. It's just that there are so few. The projection is that by 2030, our country is going to be short. I can't remember the exact number, the shortage of physicians in general, but the shortage of geriatricians was 10 times the shortage of regular physicians. So right now, healthcare policy analysts are looking at how we can provide healthcare services to our country in other ways, like let's enhance physician assistance programs. Let's develop more nurse practitioners. Let's offer more community healthcare centers, because we just have a dearth of doctors. Sorry, that's not great news.
No, I must admit for myself, I didn't know a lot of that information that you just gave about gerontologists, and it's alarming. So no, yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you for the information.
And I'm sorry, there's a difference between gerontologists and geriatricians. Geriatricians are physicians. They're the medical people. Gerontologists are people who specialize in the field of aging. And aging is a field, not a discipline. So if you go to nursing school to become a nurse, you learn a certain set of skills. You put tools in your toolbox so you can be an excellent nurse. And then after you do that, you can specialize in pediatrics or cardiology or ER nursing. And be wonderful, but you still have the same core set of skills. Where if you're a gerontologist, being a gerontologist is very different, because gerontology encompasses everything from healthcare to nutrition to transportation to entertainment, finance, business. It's a very broad array of life.
Okay. Allison, do you have any tricks up your sleeve to find gerontologists before you need to go off to the nursing home?
Boy, Kathy, I think that was who put in the question. When you find one, let me know. I'm going to start looking pretty soon myself. When you find them, follow them wherever they go. It is very difficult to find a geriatrician. And I think that the other thing that I'll just quickly mention is that as people get older, the sort of team around older, as you get older, right, like maybe you go see your primary care every year, you see your, hygienist every year to get your teeth cleaned or whatever. As you get older, the circle around you that is providing services for you actually gets bigger too. Yeah. So I think that that's something else that you want to keep in mind, especially if you're thinking about services as you get older, right? So soon, as people get older, they see their primary care, then they see their orthopedist, and then perhaps they have an ear, nose, and throat specialist. So there's a lot of sort of the circle around the older adult tends to get larger as well. So I think that that's something else that we want to be paying attention to, which is just, it's not just one person that's taking care of the older adults' healthcare needs, it's a whole team.
Well, so if you're already looking, I'm guessing I already missed the boat. I'm way back. Thank you.
I'd like to make a recommendation if to everyone. There's a book called Being Mortal, written by a physician named Atul Gawande. And the book is amazing. It's a life-changing book. It gives you perspective about living and aging and what's important and what's not important. Again, the book is Being Mortal, and it's by Atul Gawande, Atulgawande. And he's a physician. He was at Brigham and Women for a long time, and then he was off doing some other things, and now I think he's still consulting at the Brigham. The book is amazing. It's definitely worth a read.
Okay, so we'll go ahead.
I would definitely second that. And if folks don't like to read, there is a 1-hour PBS special. So feel free to read it, or there's a sort of faster version, so to speak. But the book is fabulous.
Okay, it sounds like we should include that on our website as well for people that want to look that up. So yes. Thank you. Okay, our next question is very related. How does New Hampshire compare with other states when it comes to caring for our elderly from a retirement perspective? Do we have any more specifics?
Yeah. How about, can I just do a little history lesson?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Okay, so I've worked in the field for a long time, which means I am not in my 20s. And when I was growing up, the family doctor came to our house, and there was a family doc. And nursing homes started in early 60s, and it was based on a hospital model. And when the 70s rolled around, the reimbursement rates for hospital care were very different. So older people would go to the hospital, they'd stay there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it was costing the government a lot of money. And they kind of said, okay, we're not going to be paying for this anymore. That was when Medicare first started. Medicare started in 1965. So in the 70s, they made changes to the way hospitals were reimbursed, because people were dropping older people into the hospitals and they weren't leaving. And it just was not an appropriate or efficient or kind way to serve older adults. So at that point, that's when nursing homes started growing rapidly. So people, a physician would say to the son, oh, your mother can't go home. She's not safe. She fell. She could hurt herself. And so the son would whisk her off and put her into a nursing home with the understanding that he loved his mother, wanted her to be safe, wanted her to have meals, wanted her to be taken care of, wanted her to just have, you want to keep your parents alive. You want them to be well. Unfortunately, that's not what mom wanted, but mom wasn't asked. And in those days, doctor made the decision, children followed it because doctors were the bosses, they ruled, and parents had no rights. We lived in a very paternalistic society. It's still that way a little bit, but now we have more rights. So more choice. It's called shared risk. If we understand the risk, we have the right to stay in the setting of our choice. If we are cognitively able to make that decision. But so things have changed dramatically. So nursing homes grew up out of the hospital model. They were sterile. They were hospital-like with the hospital beds. You were treated like an invalid, and it was no life. it was just no real life for people. You know, you ate at when you were told you to have your meals, you went to bed when you were told to, you were showered when you were told to, and you lost all autonomy, independence, and your personhood, really. And so things have changed. Things have changed throughout the country, including New Hampshire. We now recognize that people have the right to live their lives the way they want to live them. And they have the right to live in their own homes. They have the right to make decisions about their person, assuming they are cognitively able, meaning that they are not in advanced stages of diseases like PICS or Alzheimer's or other frontal temporal dementia. There are a variety of different types of dementias. So if you're not in advanced stages of those dementias, you have the right to make those decisions. The difficulty comes in acquiring the assistance to keep you at home as safely as it's not coming out the way I want to say it. So let me try that one again. New Hampshire doesn't offer a lot of home and community-based services to support you living independently in your own home. That was better, right, Allison?
Yes. But yeah, that is definitely the truth, that New Hampshire certainly lacks in the ability to offer services within the community. So if you need just a little bit of help, for example, you need help eating, you need help getting out of bed in the morning, there's a very long process that you have to go through in order to qualify for some of those services, or you can pay for them out of pocket. But one thing that I would say is that they're much like the geriatrician shortage that we see. There's also a major shortage in relationship to the workforce for home care workers, licensed nursing assistants, sort of those people that help older adults with their daily tasks of living. So even if you might need a little bit of help and you have the money to pay somebody to come into your home and help you with that, you might not be able to find that. So unfortunately, what oftentimes happens is that older adults will sort of transition to a nursing home, even though it tends to be a little bit more, not a little bit more, it tends to be very more expensive.
Right.
So actually, let's talk a little bit about the cost of services, because it is frightening. It is absolutely insane. So for example, there's a program called Adult Day Health, and in an Adult Day Health program, you go in the day to a setting where you can receive skilled services, skilled nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. There's a social worker. There are all kinds of activities, stimulating activities. They make sure that people receive a good meal that's the equivalent of 1/3 of the nutrition that you need in a day, plus snacks. There's transportation to and from this program. It's a phenomenal program because it gets people out of the house. It allows them to socialize. It allows them to have good health care. And if they have caregivers at home, it gives the caregivers a break. That costs in New Hampshire $86 a day. That sounds like a lot of money if you go 5 days a week, but it is a bargain compared to the other costs of services. So in New Hampshire, a homemaker, so someone to come in to help you vacuum your house or dust or clean or maybe prepare you a light meal or something, that costs approximately $25 an hour. So if you need a little more assistance with personal care, so say you need assistance with bathing or dressing, or you need assistance ambulating around, you need help, or you need help with maybe some feeding or toileting, that costs $30 a day. And I'm sorry, $30 an hour, $30 an hour. Skilled nursing ranges. So if you need a nurse to come to your house, this is a visit. This isn't even an hour. It could be 15 minutes. It ranges anywhere from $90 to $150 a visit, which is very expensive. Now, if you look at assisted living in New Hampshire, assisted living on average, the average is $4,675 a month. even that's a bargain, because if you go into a nursing home in New Hampshire, the average cost is over $10,500 a month. And that's just, it's just unconscionable. How do people afford that? You know, when you think about people who are in their 80s and 90s now, you know, they worked all their lives. They worked really hard. In those days, you worked in one job for 40 years. You get a nice little nest egg, a nice little pension. You put your kids through college. Your house is paid off, and you have a little money in the bank, and you feel great because you worked so hard and you saved and you did everything right. One hospitalization and a stay in a rehab can wipe that right out. And then what do? Then you're impoverished. And it's devastating because you thought you did everything right. It's just a hard lesson.
Right. And I feel that the same costs are associated no matter where you are. It's going to be expensive anywhere you go.
It's worse in Massachusetts. They're higher.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Okay. Allison, do you have anything to add?
I would say that okay, now Ellen's back. So I would just say that when you think about like comparison of, you know, the different states, I think that was part of the question. So New Hampshire is kind of similar to our sister states, Vermont and Maine, when it comes to services and sort of the availability of services. When you look at Massachusetts tends to be more expensive, but they also tend to have sort of a larger amount of services, as I'm correct, Ellen. And so the other thing that I'll also mention is that New Hampshire is one of the states that doesn't have sort of area agencies on aging. We instead sort of have slid in these other agencies called Service Link Resource Centers, which are the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. So those are places that older adults can really sort of be able to access information and referral. So for example, if you call Service Link Resource Center, they can help walk you through sort of Medicare enrollment. They can help provide you with sort of healthcare SHIP options. They also have what else? Like, I think like if you call and you're wondering about fuel assistance, they have a wide variety of information and assistance, but it's not the same as, say, a program like in Massachusetts related to the area agencies on aging that offer very specific programming for older adults. So like we talked about earlier, they offer fitness classes for older adults. Some of them do. They offer, I believe, congregate meal settings. They have a wide variety of sources specifically geared for older adults, whereas our service links are very much all populations, all payers.
Okay. Great, thank you. That was very educational. Our next question from YouTube is Violet Anderson, and it's a little more specific. What transportation options are available? And let me add for Violet, if we don't know exactly, how would she be able to find out?
Ooh. I'm going to leave that to you, Allison, because I think you're so, I don't know what transportation systems are in New Hampshire, but I think Service Link is a good option for finding transportation system. Is that true?
Absolutely, yeah. So Violet, I would recommend that you look at Service Link Resource Centers on their website. Also, there are volunteer driver programs that are available across New Hampshire. And I didn't put that on our resources list, but you can go on to, I think it's Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission's website, and they actually have a really cool map that allows you to look at the volunteer or look at the state of New Hampshire, and you can click on your town or the town that you're looking for transportation in, and they can see if it's covered through a volunteer driver program. There's other, and unfortunately, it's based on different types of counties. So for example, Rockingham County has different transportation options than, say, Hillsborough County. So some of those options are available if you look online. You know, if you go to your municipality website, and you might be able to find out who the service provider is, or to go through the transportation planners. But unfortunately, it's very variable across the state. Transportation is not an area that New Hampshire is very strong in. So, and unfortunately, we're trying to kind of piecemeal things together and options together for folks.
Great. Thank you. Our next question. The human lifespan has increased over the millenniums. Do we expect that trend to continue or possibly reverse?
Well, actually, there's research that takes it both ways, which is really kind of interesting. I'm a baby boomer, and people say that my children are millennials. So, but people say that millennials are the first generation that will not live longer than their parents, which
Really?
I think, which is interesting. And the projections are based on a whole lot of different information. One is the environment. Two is activities. With the internet, there's a school of thought that believes that people are more sedentary. People are, people work a lot on computers now, where before they were more physically active. There are different diseases and different, just with the pandemic, we know what the impact of that was. And when we think about changes in our environment and global warming or environmental change, we think about how that impacts the human body, how it impacts our food production, how it impacts our activity levels. And so that's one school of thought. And then you look, there are regions around the world where there are large numbers of centenarians, people who live to be over 100. And when there's, do you remember all of them, Allison? Because I don't remember where all of them are. I think there's an island in Greece, there's a place in Japan, there's some, a place in California, a county in California where there are large numbers of people who live to be over 100. And so they study these areas of the world to find out what these people have in common. And it's really hard to say. Is it genetic? Is it something in the water they drink? We just don't know. So, it's really hard to say. We don't know. It's interesting. It's a great question.
Yes, and I didn't expect that answer. I'm really surprised. Okay, Allison, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's just a matter of figuring out if there's more research that we can do to figure out what those differences are. But we need more. We need more money for that research.
Exactly.
Our next question: are there any activities or environmental factors that are aging us prematurely? Do we know of any of those things?
Oh, of course. There's lots of things, and we all engage in them every single day. Sitting ages us prematurely, and my guess is every single one of us is probably sitting right now. A human body wasn't meant to sit. It was meant to be in a vertical position or a horizontal position, and yet we sit constantly. And that's a problem. That's one thing that ages us. Sun is wonderful. You need vitamin D. It's an important part of keeping us alive and healthy. But sun ages us dramatically. It changes. It puts us at greater risk for skin cancers because we don't protect ourselves, for one thing. But also, it damages our skins. So, when you get tan and you look so good in the summertime, you have that nice rosy glow. That actually is, you're damaging your skin when you get that nice tan. It makes you have greater wrinkles, and that damage is irreversible. So, we just have to be aware of it. That's why sunscreen is so important. And then there's the usual, life in moderation is okay, but sometimes we live excessively. We're Americans. That's what we do, way it is.
Allison.
Yeah, so I would just really echo what Ellen said. And I know that we did talk quite a bit earlier about kind of having a healthy diet and making sure that you're moving your body. I would also just say, to stay away from cigarettes and sort of overconsumption of alcohol and those kinds of things. But again, as Ellen said, everything in moderation. So, if you want to have a cigar every once in a blue moon, no one's going to stop you. But
Okay, thank you. The next question, is it true people need less sleep as they age? And if so, why?
Well, it depends. A teenager needs, well, let me rephrase. So, when you have a baby, the baby sleeps 16 hours a day. We need less sleep than that. And then as we get older, we need a little bit less sleep. Adolescents actually need to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day in order to live healthy and function optimally. As we enter adulthood, optimum sleep is 7 to 8 hours a day. I saw a study actually last week that said that as we age, we should get 7 hours of sleep a night. So that's less. However, when you go below 7 hours, you don't function optimally.
But I think something else that's important to point out, though, is that sort of the rhythm of sleep of older adults also changes. So I think that sometimes, so older adults tend to get more sleepy, say, in the afternoon or in the early evening, and they have a tendency to then wake up in the middle of the night for sort of younger people, right? So it's because that rhythm is a bit off for them. It's a little different. So they still need that 7 to 8 hours, but the time frame of when they want to sleep is a little bit different.
Very interesting.
When you're a teenager, you don't want to go to bed till after midnight. It's your circadian rhythm. That's just where it is. When you're older, you don't see midnight unless you're waking up at midnight.
Thank you. Okay, our next question. In many cultures, the aged are treated with respect for their life experiences. Why don't we see that here in the United States?
Because we're very ageist. We're a disrespectful culture. I'm so negative tonight. I apologize. I really don't mean to be so negative. But we are scrappy. We work really hard. Look what we've built in this country. We've done amazing things, but we've done it we've done it by being strong and independent and fairly goal-oriented, but independently goal-oriented. We are not a collectivist society. Many Asian cultures are collectivist societies. We are an independent, autonomous culture. And that's allowed us to accomplish some amazing things, but we've lost things. We have grown and moved. Grammy might live in Florida. Mom and dad might live in California. Kids are living in Boston. We travel. The world is small. We no longer have the same filial responsibility that other cultures have. We've lost that. We've gained a lot of other things, but that's a problem. And with that, we seem to have lost respect for older adults. We don't, or an appreciation for the experiences of life lived.
Very interesting perspective. Allison, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact question, but to just go off of what Ellen was saying, I was going to say that there seems to be very much a mentality of us versus them, but them is just older us. So I feel like there's a lot of sort of negativity that's occurring and ageism that's occurring to older people, and it's very just disrespectful because it's going to be all of us at one point in time, as Ellen says, if we're lucky. So, I'm just trying to think about how sort of some of the efforts that are going on a national level, there is an effort called Reframing Aging, which looks at how we talk about aging and how we change the conversation that we have about aging to really value the older adult population as having tremendous social capital and having that lived experience, as opposed to thinking about older adults as being burdensome.
And, language plays a large role in how we perceive things. And when you think about how language has changed, even our language is a little more disrespectful. So we're trying to watch how we talk and how we share information about aging. Because when you say old people, it's automatically you characterize somebody and it creates an image in your mind. And we've used, and a lot of it is, politically correct stuff. We used to use the word elders, that has many connotations. We used to use the word senior. That has many connotations as well. And so we tried to think about, well, who are we talking about? And we're talking about adult populations who are older. So we're talking about older adults. And when we think about older adults versus younger adults or middle adults, it changes the way you perceive people. And so we try to watch our language. I keep telling my children every time they swear, we have a nice swear jar. I'm expecting a nice vacation to Hawaii at sometime soon, and because the language you use allows people to form an opinion about you, but it also influences the way they think about what you're talking about. So, it's important to think about what we say.
Okay, very good. Allison? In agreement?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in agreement. Yeah.
Okay, so we only have time for 2 more questions. This one's a fascinating one. So, isolation can be a challenge for older adults. What does psychology tell us about the impacts of isolation and effective strategies for fighting it? And what symptoms should we look for in others and our loved ones?
Do you want to take it, Allison? This is right up your alley.
Sure. I'm sorry. Could it be possible? Could I get that question flashed one more time? Yes. Okay, great. So I think that isolation is certainly something that is, so I want to start by first saying that social isolation and loneliness are two, while somewhat related concepts, are different concepts. So social isolation is the actual physical sort of act of being separated from sort of loved ones, of friends, of neighbors, and sort of wanting that social connection. Loneliness, on the other hand, is a very subjective feeling, right? So you can actually be in a very crowded room and still feel very lonely. So I think that when we talk about the two concepts, oftentimes they sort of get interchanged between the two. So I think that perhaps you're asking about two different questions. So I'll answer the loneliness one first, because that's what I really like to talk about. So when you're looking at sort of loved ones, a good way to sort of check and see if they're feeling lonely is, one, you can always ask them, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling alone? Are you feeling lonely? Those kinds of things. Other sort of symptoms are related to things like, are they feeling down, blue, depressed? Are they feeling, nervous, anxious, possibly trying to keep people on the phone for longer, or not wanting people to leave, or possibly, like trying to, coax people into coming over to their house, those kinds of things. So that's what I would say. Look for kind of those tall tale signs of feeling sort of that loneliness portion. In relationship to the social isolation, I would really say that trying to be proactive and see, can you get people connected some way, somehow, right? If they don't have transportation, if they can't leave their home, or other ways like that, maybe bring in some type of technology device, see if there's some way that you can somehow get them engaged in other types of activities, perhaps in their neighborhood, and those kinds of things.
And if you don't mind, Allison, I'll add to that a little bit. Loneliness is highly correlated with depression and anxiety. So when an older adult is experiencing loneliness and it's to the point where it's impacting their daily lives, you notice things like changes in their eating. Either they're not eating as much or they're refusing meals. Things like sleeping all the time or not sleeping enough. Another telltale sign is not engaging in self-care, maybe staying in their pajamas all day or sitting in the same chair all day, or not engaging in activities that they used to enjoy, maybe taking walks or gardening or knitting or whatever it might be. So when you see a change, a marked change in someone's affect, their facial features, the way they're engaging and talking, their sleeping patterns, their eating behaviors, and their self-care, that's a red flag to immediately intervene. With regard to social isolation, a lot of older people, for one reason or another, can't interact the way that they had in the past. Maybe they don't have access to transportation. Maybe they're on a fixed income and can't engage in activities that they once enjoyed because they're concerned about the cost. But one thing that we've learned is that older adults are healthier and do so much better when they contribute to their world. And their world could be their family, it could be their neighborhood, it could be their town, it could be a smaller community or a larger community, it could be engaging in their state activities or national activities. And by contributing, it could be anything. It could be making phone calls for a political campaign. It could be watching grandchildren or helping a neighbor weed a garden. It could be anything from volunteering. One of the things that a Council on Aging in Massachusetts did during the pandemic for homebound older adults who couldn't participate in activities that they had normally participated in is they started a telephone tree where they gave homebound older adults a list of 5 names of people to call a week, of other homebound older adults who were going to be completely isolated and not have any contact. And so they were able, by getting a group of older adults who needed socialization and needed contact, they gave them purpose. Everybody had a purpose. They were helping somebody else. They were doing something good. And it really was a remarkably successful program during the pandemic.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we're going to try and squeeze one more question in before the final question. Let me see if I can get it here. Okay, so we're going to go to our question. We'd like to end the sessions with this question. And so for each one of you, the question is this: if there's one thing that you would like the audience to take away from tonight, it could have been something you've already said or something you wanted to come up and I didn't ask, or anything in between. If there's one thing you want them to take home from tonight, what would it be? Ellen?
You get one life. We start aging from the moment we're conceived, and we don't stop till the day we die. So if we are respectful and we are contributing and we hold our heads up high as we get older, then we're setting a good example. And as long as we're taking care of ourselves and doing the best that we can, then we're offering opportunities for other people to learn. And we don't stop learning till we die. just because we get older doesn't mean we don't have a lot to give. And I think that's a really important concept that we all need to remember. And it doesn't matter if we are living with a disability or we have chronic illnesses, we still have a lot to give. We've had years and years and years of experience that does not go away just because we're changing.
Great. And Allison, for you, one last thing.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo kind of a little bit of what Ellen said, which is that there is tremendous social capital, as I mentioned earlier, in our older adult population. And I think that it's something that we as sort of a society don't value. And I think that that's a tremendous sort of disadvantage on our part. So I would say that the one thing that I would hope that folks would take away from tonight would be that to think about older adults and to think about the aging process in general as not being something to be afraid of, as not being something to necessarily, you always hear folks who are always like, oh, those are that's the downside of getting older. I have a problem with that, I guess, but I like to think of aging as more of an opportunity. And I would say that I would hope that perhaps after our conversations tonight that folks have the opportunity to learn a little bit more, as well as think about the value and the contributions of getting older as well.
Okay, well, thank you. I must say this has been very educational, very interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with both of you. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us. It was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, a couple of reminders. The audience, you can rewatch this episode shortly after we say goodnight in a few minutes on our Facebook or YouTube channels, or you can go ahead and share other episodes if you want to look on Facebook or YouTube, or if you want to go to our Science Cafe nh.org website, you can see a whole list of probably 5 or 6, 7 years worth of topics. And if it's something that interests you, go ahead and take a look at it. Thank you for the audience tonight. Thank you for all the questions. That was great on your behalf from you. I really appreciate it. A very special thanks to both of you. Again, it was really very enjoyable, and I was thoroughly intrigued by the whole conversation. For the audience, if you have any ideas that you would like to see us do for future Science Cafes, send them to us on our YouTube page or Facebook. And we will try and go ahead and see what we can do about scheduling some of those things. Now, next month, we will get together on Wednesday, June 15th. And until then, I want to say thank you to all once more. And everybody have a good evening. So long.